Well, to say the 2022 season has gone the Red Sox way would be totally wrong. It has not gone their way. And now we're through the first week of August, and not much has changed. You win 2 out of 3 in Houston, you feel good about yourself, and then they lose 3 out of 4 in Kansas City, having troubles with what they've been having troubles for all of July, and it's not going their way. The trade deadline acquisitions look like they are making a little bit of a difference with Tommy Pham playing pretty well, and Hosmer playing well, and even Reese McGuire playing well. But they still look like a team with a bunch of holes that need to be filled and a lot of teams that's missing critical pieces due to injuries. That's what it looks like right now. It's not looking positive. However, this brings up an interesting question. What what does the rest of the season mean for 2023? What does it mean? Does it change the outlook for 2023? Does it change who might be on the roster? Maybe, maybe not. But we're gonna cover that right here on Bleacher Brawls. We're gonna get into that. What different scenarios the rest of the season could play on next year's roster. My name is Derek. You're tuned into Bleacher Brawls, and let's get straight into it. Obviously, this is a little bit of a different type of video. However, I do have a column going up. Actually, it is up right now on the Bleacher Brawls website, covering what I think the 2023 Red Sox roster will look like. So I'm not going to get into what I think it's going to look like because you can just read that. That'll be the first link in the description. So make sure to check that out. But what is interesting is how the rest of the season has an effect on what could potentially happen next year. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about guys like Tristan Cassis being ready, and you know what free agents could they sign? They're gonna have a lot of money available. How much money will they spend? There's all these questions going around, and there are things that obviously us as fans that we want, but there's also things that the team knows they need. And what are they going to prioritize? Obviously, they're going to prioritize the needs. But the rest of the season, I think, is really going to have an effect on what this team looks like in next season. This team goes out and gets on a run, and guys start playing well, especially someone like a Jarren Duran. He can play well. I know, obviously, the big blunder yesterday and a couple blunders, and then got into it with fans in Kansas City. It's not a great look. Um, but the season's not over. Who knows? Now, what is interesting is, you know, they brought in 3 guys to the trade deadline. Only one who isn't under control for next year technically is Tommy Pham. He does have a mutual option. I would expect that to be accepted by both sides, even though that's rare. I would expect it to. Now, the pitching, I think, is the really big question to ask here when we're talking about this. My pitching predictions for the 2023 roster will be up next week, next Monday, I think, or next Sunday, something like that. But really, the thing here is when you look at the pitching and you go Nathan Eovaldi, oh, expiring deal. Let's see, Rich Hill expiring deal, Michael Wacha expiring deal, James Paxton even to an extent if he can pitch this year. I mean, he's technically an expiring deal. He does have a team and a player option, which, you know, the team option first 2 years, $20 million. I'd expect that to get declined, but I would expect the 1 year, $6 million player option to be accepted, especially if he doesn't pitch at all this year. You would think he'd have to accept that. Now, if that does happen, and obviously that gets accepted, and you know he stays on the team, it brings up interesting points with the rotation because if he's on the team, you have Nick Pivetta and Chris Sale. That's 3 rotation spots. A lot of people are going to want to see Cutter Crawford get a rotation spot. It's already 4. Now you have got some people like Winkowski. Some people are worried on him about him not having a true swing and miss pitch and how he gives up a decent amount of hard contact. Bayo looked good, and his Milwaukee outing was looking good in Houston before he got injured. But some people might dissent and say, well, those are both out in relief, not as a starter. And then there's also guys in AAA. Brandon Walter's injured right now. I'm pretty sure I'm 99.9% sure on that. That he's injured right now. Brian Mata still in AA. It's his first. He's just got back off the Tommy John. Chris Murphy, I think, is up in AAA now. I'm pretty sure he got called up last month. And then there might have been someone else that I'm forgetting, maybe not. Connor Siebold, actually. He's the other guy I'm forgetting. He's on the MLB injured list right now. So there's a lot of options in the bullpen. Matt Strom's going to expire in deal. Sarah Moore's team option is probably going to be declined. There's probably a couple other guys that I'm not thinking of. But then there's performance for a guy like a Matt Barnes. If he can pitch well, he'll be on the roster next year because he's got that contract. If he doesn't pitch well, though, they might just DFA him. We'll see where it ends up, but who knows? Now, getting to next year's bullpen, Um, we'll see because you also have Halkin Whitlock, who maybe they go back to the rotation, maybe they don't. I honestly have no clue what that's going to look like, especially if you have Sale, Pavetta, and Paxton all there. Those guys aren't moving to the bullpen. Carter Crawford's looked good enough from the rotation recently, besides obviously yesterday's start, but besides yesterday, you can't really move him into the bullpen with how he's been pitching, especially if he continues it down the stretch pitching well. And then they don't want to put Bayo in the bullpen. And if he gets that fifth starter spot, then you're stuck with Whitlock and Houck being in the bullpen, which I shouldn't say you're stuck because it might not be a bad thing. And then you also have Schreiber there. You can have a very good back in the bullpen. Maybe they could also go out and get another guy and have a dominant back in the bullpen. Who knows? But those guys' performances, that four of Crawford, Bayo, if he's on the big league roster, who knows though? But then definitely Halkin Whitlock. Seabold, if he makes it back on the big league roster for this year, should also be considered. And then the two ones that I do want to bring up, I know they're not pitchers, but they do factor into the pitching. Conor Wong and Ronaldo Hernandez, because Chaim Bloom, to me, it seems he wants a catcher that's very good pitch framing at the very least. And then he also would like to have a guy who has a good arm behind the plate to throw guys out when they're trying to steal. But most importantly, good pitch framing. And if Wong or Hernandez can kind of show that they can do that, they might earn themselves, and they can at least hit decently, they might earn themselves a roster spot for 2023. I personally don't think that they're going to be on, at least if they're on the roster, it would be as a third catcher. I don't think those guys are going to grab the starting spot. I think they want Reese McGuire to be a backup catcher. The rest of this year, I actually think he'll get more appearances than Kevin Plawecki. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Plawecki gets released late in the year so they can roll Ronaldo Hernandez and Conor Wong up to the big leagues in September when the roster increases to 28 and run all three catchers out there. But the guy I have my eyes on is Mike Zenino. I've said it before on Twitter Spaces. I've said it to some other people. I truly think Mike Zenino fits what the Red Sox want at catcher and what Chaim Bloom wants a catcher. And Chaim was in Tampa when they traded for Zenino. So Zenino, very good pitch framer, good arm. I think he has a decent pop time, if not good pop time. Or maybe no, sorry, the arm's decent. The arm's just above average or around average, but the pop time is very good, very good. Pitch framing's very good. Obviously, don't look at the 2022 numbers. Look at the 2021 numbers when he was healthy for like the whole year. This year, injuries didn't really play much. All that stuff. Whatever. Don't look at 2022. You gotta look at the 2021 numbers for Mike Zenino. Yes, the average isn't great, but he's bringing you great defense. Behind the plate, which is what it's needed, and it's gonna help. That would help the pitchers out as well. Now, does that, obviously Mike Zanino's power and that 33 home runs he could bring could be huge, but that's to be seen. But the main thing, I think they want a catcher who's going to help out all these pitchers, especially these young pitchers, and is going to help them and maybe steal some strikes for them, maybe even steal some runs for those young pitchers. And maybe even for these older guys too. Maybe, they could use, maybe a guy like Chris Sale could use someone like Mike Zenino behind the plate stealing a couple of runs for him, or James Paxton, or even Nick Pivetta could maybe use. I know he's not old, but he's more of a veteran than Bayo, Crawford, Winkowski, Seabold, even Halkin Whitlock. So there's that as well. Now, the big two I do want to really bring up on the offensive side, the position player side, Jarren Duran and Xander Bogaerts. JD Martinez, I think he's off the team regardless of what happens. I think they would like to free up the DH spot and get a DH who can play in the field a little bit. Also, too, if Hosmer is going to be part of this team, that means they need the DH spot open because Casas and Hosmer both can't play first base. So Xander Bogaerts is going to have a very interesting rest of the year. If he can get a little bit of power back, that would be huge for him staying with the Red Sox. However, don't be surprised, and I'm not saying that the Red Sox won't give Bogaerts a good offer, but don't be surprised if some team just comes out of nowhere and just gives Bogaerts a ridiculous amount of money. You know why? Because teams do it all the time for shortstops. The only guy that I can think of that didn't get a boatload of money as a shortstop in free agency is Trevor Story. And why? Because teams didn't think he could play shortstop. And that's why he ended up at second base in Boston. I don't see Story moving back over to shortstop because of his arm. I just don't see it happening. So that brings up the question at shortstop for the Red Sox. They don't have guys ready. If Bogaerts leaves, they're not looking for a star shortstop. They're looking for a guy to transition. They're looking for a guy similar to the Yankees, getting Isaiah Kiner, Falefa, waiting for Peraza or Volpe to be ready. They are waiting for Marcel Meyer. They just need a guy to come to kind of fill in that gap. Who would it be? I talk about it in my column. So go read that if you haven't. I'm not going to say exactly who it is, but they're going to look for someone who is at least an okay hitter, just not terrible with the bat, but very good defense. Very good defense, can play a good shortstop, and also help out the pitchers. I think that's another thing. Defense, help out the pitchers. Don't give up more runs than you should be. I think that's huge. We've seen it how many times that's bit the Red Sox in the behind this year. Don't give up more runs than you should. Part of that's having a good defense. That's why I think they're going to go out and get a good defensive shortstop if Bogarts does leave. Devers, I think he's set at third. The contract extension to me is just a matter of if, isn't a matter if, it's when. I do think they could get it done this offseason, but we'll see how that does play out. Now, the interesting one is in center, in Jarren Duran, because obviously they're staying with him the rest of this year. They kind of have to, right? Until Kike comes back in September, but at that point, depending on if Story's even back by then, maybe Kike just plays second base. Here's the thing I have with Duran. Like, you can see how low his self-confidence and his self-esteem is right now, and his self-belief. You can see how low it is. And he really could use, like, a mentor in that outfield. A veteran player. I don't know if it comes to big leagues. Maybe he goes and plays in one of the winter leagues. But he needs to figure that out. Do the Red Sox trade him in the offseason? That's another interesting thing. I don't know if they do. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe they want to go out and bring in like a pitcher, for example, and they need you to use Duran in a trade. Maybe that happens, especially if they find a center field option. But like I said, I don't think they're gonna go out and get some crazy bat for center field. It's gonna be a defensive focused acquisition. And look at the center field, especially if Pham stays and he stays in left and Verdugo stays in right at Fenway. I don't love Verdugo in right at Fenway. Honestly, I don't like it that much, Verdugo in right field at Fenway, but I'll take it over Tommy Pham in right field at Fenway. I am all right with Verdugo in right field in other ballparks. Just at Fenway, I'm not crazy over because there's so much ground to cover. But if you get a good very good defensive center fielder, that does help that as well. So there is that. Now, who that could be, that's to be seen. Now, I do also want to bring up, I don't see guys as trading a bunch of prospects to get people. I know people mentioned guys like Sean Murphy or Ramon Laureano or guys that mentioned other people. I don't see the Red Sox throwing a massive prospect offer to get one of those guys. And there's other guys too around the league I know people have brought up. I just don't see it happening. It doesn't make sense with the trajectory they're on, and then with Heimblum running the team. It just doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But final thoughts for me are that the rest of the season will have an effect on who stays and goes. If Bogart struggles the rest of the way, I don't think he stays. Or at least if he struggles power-wise, his ground ball rate is up, his fly ball rate is down, and it's somewhat significant. His launch angle is down by like 3% on I guess the average launch angle, which may not sound crazy, but going from like 13.5% to like 10 point something, I think it is. Like that's a big drop. I think that's the lowest it's been since like 2017 or 2016 or something like that. So I think part of it is and maybe he's not hitting the ball as hard. His percentile rankings are down in average exit velocity and max exit velocity. So not hitting the ball as hard, and then also not hitting the ball in the air enough, for at least hitting enough line drives at the very least, hitting a lot more ground balls. And I think that is truly making a difference in Bogart's season this year. JD Martinez, I haven't done the research, but also too, he's getting older. And plus, I didn't see him returning after this year anyways. I thought if had he declined his player option, the Red Sox wouldn't have brought him back. Anyways, so we'll see what happens. However, next year, here's my hope for the team. I'm asking for a lineup that just doesn't have like a massive black hole in it. I think Dahlbeck probably ends up on the bench next year, but like he could be a decent bench option. Like he's not gonna be great, but fill in every like once a week or maybe even less. Fill in every so often at first or third or DH if someone needs a rest. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see a problem with that. Just like stuff like that. Like don't like I know people like aren't crazy over Dahlbeck, but that's a decent bench option. You're looking at this team, there's some options that maybe they could go and get who are very good defensively. Maybe not great with the bat, but like it's like okay, I can live with it for the defense. I know people go crazy after Jackie Bradley Jr. because he can't hit. I'm not asking for people like Jackie Bradley Jr. who are really struggling to hit. I love Jackie, but like he couldn't hit a beach ball if they were throwing a beach ball. But his defense is stellar. I'm not asking for that like massive of a drop in offense just to get good defense. just a guy who's league average, maybe a little bit below league average offensively, but gives you very good defense. You have a couple guys like that. They're not massive black holes, but they're not like they're just okay offensively. You know, you have a couple guys like that in the 8-9 spots, and then you have like decent guys, 1 through 7. I think you could put together a decent lineup that could be that. Who knows? Maybe it could be enough if your pitching's good enough. And I think next year's team's really going to be reliant on the pitching, and especially too being able to stay healthy too. That's another massive question. They were very healthy in 2021. They did have some overperformances in 2022, underperformances and injuries so far. Obviously, you never know what could happen the last 2 months of the season. Who knows? The Red Sox could be the best team in the world the next 2 months. You never know. Stuff happens, but it's very unlikely. I said on the podcast that after the trade deadline that the Red Sox goal should be to make the playoffs. And it still should be their goal. Their goal should be to make the playoffs. That should be your goal. You should aim for it. Not all goal. You're not going to reach all goals, but you set a goal. It should be one of those goals where if things go right, if things work out the right way, you could reach it. You can definitely reach it. Are the Red Sox reaching it as of right now? It doesn't seem like it, but like I said, it's not like they're totally out of it. It's not like it's a non-option, and you have to shoot for it. What's the point of going through these next 2 months if you're not trying to make the playoffs? And that's why I think their goal still should be to make the playoffs. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But that's what you're trying for. That's what you're aiming for if that is your goal. If you don't make it, it's not the end of the world, but you prefer to make it, and I think that's where you lie. That's your goal the rest of the year. Make the playoffs, and then, also, too, try and figure out who's the clubhouse leader. Because now Vasquez is gone. Is that Bogarts? Is that Devers? And we'll figure out a clubhouse leader who will be on the team in 2023, please. Don't just make Bogarts the leader and then not bring him back. If he's going to be the leader, he needs to stay. But if it's someone like a Rafi Devers, or it goes to someone maybe like a Hosmer who just came in. Chris Sale, I would think, would be the guy, but he's also going to play to be that guy. So there's that as well. He's also going to play and be with the team to be that guy. So a lot of question marks for 2023. A lot of them still need to be answered. The ball's in Heimblum's court. What's he going to do with it? Who knows? Will he make the shot? Will he miss? Will he pass and let someone else make it? Who knows? That's all to be seen. But that's going to wrap it up here on Bleacher Brawls. Make sure to check out all the links in the description, the website, podcast, Instagram, and Twitter, plus all the cruise Twitters. Also, the first link in the description will be my article, my column covering my Red Sox 2023 prediction, what I think the roster is going to look like for the position player side of it. Then next week we will have the pitching side of it going up. That'll be a fun one as well. So make sure to check that out. That'll be the first link in the description. That's it. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You've been watching Bleacher Brawls. My name is Derek, and I'll see you next time.